Okay, deep breath. Let me tell you about something pretty heavy that happened in my life. It's kind of a long story, but you asked, and honestly, it helps to talk about it, especially with someone I trust. So, picture this. My name is Emily. I'm the younger one in what you might call a blended family. Blended, huh? That word always felt a bit off to me, like it was supposed to mean everything was smooth and mixed together nicely. Let me tell you my childhood. Not exactly a smooth blend. My mum was married before to a guy who died when my half-sister Jessica was 5. Then Mum met my dad, they got married, and I showed up about a year later. Sounds simple enough on paper, right? Yeah, well, life's never just on paper. See, Mum had this house, inherited it from her first husband. It wasn't fancy, but it was a solid, good house. She also owned a sewing factory. After she and Dad got married, she asked him to help run the business. They were actually really good together. I have to give them that. Dad was sharp with the money side of things, and Mum handled the creative stuff, the making, the people. They really made the company grow, almost doubling the profits pretty fast. I remember hearing them talk once, when I was really little, thinking I was asleep in the next room. They were in the kitchen talking about the future. I really hope the girls will take over someday, Mum said, her voice soft. Keep it in the family, you know. And Dad agreed. That would be great. Emily's already got a good eye for design, and Jessica's sharp with numbers. If only they knew what was really going on in Jessica's head. My dear half-sister, she never, ever let me forget that everything, the house, the business, even the mismatched set of spoons we ate cereal with, belonged to her and Mom. This is my house, she'd practically snarl, blocking the door to her room. You're just living in it because your dad freeloads off Mom. I was just a kid, you know. Too young to really grasp why she was so mean, why there was so much anger in her. I just wanted to play with her cool toys or borrow a crayon, but every single time I touched something that wasn't explicitly mine, she'd snatch it away. That's mine, she'd screech, her face all twisted up. My real dad bought it before he died. You can't have it. Mum would try to step in, bless her heart. Jessica, honey, that's not nice. Emily is your sister. And Jessica would just spit back, half-sister, and she gets everything. It's not fair. Dad didn't say much during those moments. He'd just put a hand on my head and tell me to try and ignore her. But how could I? She was like a dark cloud following me around, determined to make my life miserable. I remember one day finding some coloured pencils in the living room. They were probably Mum's, but they felt like a treasure to me. I was so excited finally. I could draw the fancy dresses and wild patterns that were always swirling around in my head. I started sketching, totally lost in my own little world. Then Jessica, she just stormed in. "Those are mine!" she yelled, grabbing the pencils right out of my hand before I could even react. Then, the drawings, she just tore them up, right in front of me. I ran to Mum, just bawling. Mum held me so tight. Then she got this look on her face, you know? That I'm done with this look. She marched right over to Jessica's room. "That is enough," I heard her shout. "You will not treat your sister this way." But it never really changed anything. Jessica just kept finding new, creative ways to remind me I was the outsider, the one who didn't truly belong. And as we got older, it only got worse. As we grew up, Mum and Dad honestly tried their best to keep things calm. They'd buy us matching outfits, give us the same amount for allowances, equal gifts on holidays, but nothing was ever enough for Jessica. "Emily's sweater is softer," she'd whine, or "her necklace has more sparkly bits. You always give her the best stuff." It didn't matter if it wasn't true, if the things were exactly the same. In Jessica's mind, I was the spoiled favourite, the intruder who was stealing her rightful place. The victim narrative was strong with her, always. When I was about 10, my parents decided to sell the old house and buy a bigger one. I remember the moving day, how light I felt, how thrilled I was at the idea of a fresh start, having my own room, my own space away from Jessica's constant presence. "This is amazing!" I remember squealing, doing a little twirl in the empty room that was going to be mine. And then, there she was, Jessica in the doorway, her face dark and stormy. "Don't get too comfortable," she said, her voice low and chilling. "This house belongs to me and Mum. You're just a guest here." My heart just sank. Even in a brand new place, nothing had changed. The weight of her resentment was already here. Later that night, I remember hearing Mum and Dad talking in hushed tones. "I just don't know what to do anymore," Mum sighed. "I've tried everything with Jessica." Dad suggested maybe they should get some professional help. A therapist? A counsellor? Mum agreed, and soon Jessica was going to weekly sessions. But honestly, if anything, it just made her worse, more resentful. "Oh, so now I'm crazy, huh?" she'd snap after a particularly tough appointment. "You just want to fix me so precious little Emily can have a perfect life." I wanted to scream, to tell her my life was far from perfect with her in it, but I just bit my tongue. It never did any good to argue with Jessica. As the years went by, her victim complex just grew and grew. Everything was always someone else's fault, usually mine. She'd complain endlessly about how unfair her life was, how no one understood her struggles. "You're all against me," she'd say, like we were some unified front plotting her downfall. "You owe me for everything I've been through." I started avoiding her as much as possible, staying in my room, burying myself in books or sketching, or just staying over at friends' houses. Anything to escape the constant drama, the negativity that just radiated off her. So when Jessica finally graduated high school and left for college in another state, it felt like the whole house just exhaled. Like we could finally breathe again. "Maybe some time away will do her good," Mum said, her voice full of hope. For the first time in years, literal years, I felt like I could actually relax in my own home. No more walking on eggshells, no more bracing myself for the next random attack of Jessica's jealousy. It was peaceful. Those 4 years while Jessica was away at college were honestly the happiest of my young life. I finally felt free to just be myself. I threw myself into my studies, especially art and design. I'd spend hours sketching clothes, dreaming up new styles, new textures, new ways things could be made. Mum noticed my passion, my focus. She started bringing home scraps of fabric from the factory for me to play with, bolts of material she thought I might like. "You've got a real talent, Emily," she'd say, looking at my sketches or the little mock-ups I made. "A real eye." For once I felt seen for who I was, for what I could do, not just as Jessica's annoying little sister. I started allowing myself to imagine a future where I could use my skills, maybe even work in the family business someday. After I graduated high school, I got accepted into a college in a big city, quite a distance away, to study design. It felt like a dream come true, a real escape. The night before I left, Mum and Dad sat me down for a talk, just the three of us. "We are so incredibly proud of you, Emily," Mum said, her eyes getting a little watery. "You know we support your dreams, right?" I nodded, a big lump forming in my throat. Dad chimed in. "We do. And we were hoping that after you graduate from college, you might consider coming back to work with us. Your designs could really take the company to the next level." It was such a generous offer, one that would let me pursue my passion while still being part of the family legacy they'd built. I promised them I'd think about it seriously, but honestly, I was itching to spread my wings, to experience life away from the shadow of my past, away from where Jessica had made me feel like I didn't belong. Returning to my hometown didn't feel quite as appealing as starting fresh. College life was everything I'd hoped for and more. It was during my second year there that I met him, Mark. He was a few years older, working on his master's in business. We literally bumped into each other at a busy campus coffee shop. I managed to spill my entire latte all over his shirt. Mortified, I started apologizing like crazy, and he just laughed. We got to talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. Mark was funny, kind, incredibly smart, and he actually listened when I talked about my design ideas, my dreams for fabrics and fashion. We started dating soon after, and things just felt easy. Right, as graduation started looming, Mark and I started talking about our future. We'd been together for over 2 years by then, and things were getting serious, you know. "I've got a job lined up here in the city," he told me one night over dinner at our favourite little Italian place. "What do you think about staying here? Maybe together?" My heart just absolutely soared at the idea. I'd already landed a great position as a junior designer at an up-and-coming fashion company downtown, and the thought of building a life with Mark, right there in the city, away from all the complicated family history and drama, it was incredibly tempting. But I knew I had to tell my parents face to face about my job and my plans, so Mark and I planned a trip back to my hometown. I was honestly really nervous about introducing him to my family, especially since I knew Jessica would be there too. I braced myself for the usual snide remarks, the subtle digs. But to my surprise, the visit went better than I could have ever hoped. Mum and Dad adored Mark. Even Jessica was well. She wasn't exactly warm and welcoming, but she was civil. She didn't make any snide comments or try to undermine me, which was a first. It was weirdly normal. Over dinner one night, I finally broke the news about my job in the city and my plans to stay. "That's wonderful, honey," Mum said, but I could see it in her eyes, that little flicker of disappointment that I wasn't coming. Home to the family business. Dad cleared his throat. "Actually, we had an idea we wanted to run by you, Emily. What if you opened a branch of our company there in the city? You could be in charge of everything design-related, create your own line, have full creative control." I was stunned. It was such a generous, forward-thinking offer. It would allow me to pursue my dreams, stay in the city with Mark, and still be deeply connected to the family legacy. Can "Can I think about it?" I asked. They smiled and said of course. The rest of the visit passed pleasantly. As Mark and I were leaving, gathering our bags, Jessica actually pulled me aside. "Hey," she said, looking uncomfortable. It was so unlike her. "I know things haven't always been great between us." She hesitated, then pushed on. "But I'd really like to try and change that. Maybe I could come visit you sometime." I was skeptical, of course. Years of hostility don't just vanish. But I nodded. "Sure, Jessica, that would be nice." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm after Mark and I got back to the city. I threw myself into my new job, learning everything I could, working late, trying to impress my bosses with my designs. Things with Mark were great. We started seriously talking about getting married, looking at apartments together, really planning out our future. Everything just felt perfect. Then, about 3 months after our visit home, I got a surprise phone call. It was Jessica. "Hey little sis," she said, and she sounded oddly cheerful, like genuinely happy, not fake happy. "I'm going to be in your city for a bit. Mind if I crash at your place for a few days?" I nearly dropped my phone. Jessica, voluntarily coming to see me. It seemed too good to be true, honestly. But I remembered her saying she wanted to try and change things, and I figured, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe we can finally start to be sisters. I decided to give her a chance. When Jessica arrived, I barely recognized her. The scowling, resentful girl I'd grown up with seemed to be gone. This Jessica was all smiles, hugs, even compliments. It was jarring in a good way. That first night over dinner, she dropped a bombshell. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, twirling pasta on her fork, looking at me with these wide, earnest eyes. "Why don't you just come back home? We could work together at the family business. We could be a team, Emily. It would be..." "Great!" I almost choked on my wine. "What?" "Jessica, but I just started my job here. And Mark." She just waved her hand dismissively. "Bring him along. There are plenty of opportunities back home. Dad needs help." I shook my head, still processing the sudden turnaround. "Thanks, Jessica, but no. Actually, Mum and Dad suggested I open a branch here. I'm still considering it." For just a split second, I saw it. A flash of the old Jessica. A tightness around her eyes, a slight downturn of her mouth. But it passed. So quickly, I honestly thought I might have imagined it. "Well," she said, her smile returning, "if you won't come home, maybe I could just stay here a while longer. We've got so much catching up to do, don't we?" Against my better judgment, overriding that tiny voice of skepticism in my head, I agreed. And to my absolute surprise, living with Jessica this time wasn't the nightmare I'd always expected. It was easy. Pleasant, even. She was actually helpful, doing more than her share of the chores, cooking dinner sometimes. We'd stay up late, talking about our childhoods, sharing memories, actually laughing together about silly things that happened. It felt like I was finally getting the sister I'd always wanted. The one I'd dreamed of having when I was little and just wanted her to play with me. One night, over a bottle of wine, Jessica brought up the business idea again. "What if we open that branch together?" she suggested, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Think about it, Emily. You handle the design, the creative side. I'll do the business, the operations. We'd make such a great team. With your talent and my business sense, we could do anything. The idea was incredibly tempting. Despite our past, we'd been getting along so well, and having her business acumen really could help get a new branch off the ground quickly and smoothly. It felt like maybe we could finally build something together, turn the years of rivalry into partnership. Let me think about it, I said, not wanting to jump in completely, but definitely considering it more seriously than ever before, as me. The weeks passed. Mark started coming over more often, staying later. At first, I was really nervous about how he and Jessica would get along, given our history and all the bad blood. But to my relief, they seemed to hit it off almost instantly. I'd come home from work to find them laughing together over some inside joke I didn't get, or deep in discussion about some complex business concept I couldn't follow. It genuinely warmed my heart to see two of the most important people in my life getting along so well. It felt like my world was finally coming together, messy family history and all. Mark and I officially set a date for our wedding. It was just 6 months away. It felt so real. I designed the invitations myself, of course, spent hours carefully, curating the guest list, agonizing over every single detail of the menu, the flowers, the decorations. Jessica was right there through every step of it, offering suggestions, helping me with logistics, being a sister. It felt so good to share it all with her. Meanwhile, Mark and I had pretty much decided we would open that branch of my family's company in the city after the wedding. Jessica and I spent countless evenings together, poring over business plans, talking strategy, getting more and more excited about the future with each conversation. We are going to be such an amazing team, Jessica said one night, clinking her wine glass against mine, her smile wide and genuine. It felt like the start of something truly special, not just for the business, but for us. It was 2 months before the big day. My life felt full, maybe a little chaotic, but wonderfully so. I was juggling my job, finishing up wedding preparations, and getting the groundwork laid for the new business venture with Jessica. Life was hectic, but it was good. It felt right. Then the call came, the one that changed everything. "Emily, it's Dad." His voice sounded strained, tense. Over the phone, it just felt wrong. "Your mother, she's not well. She hasn't been feeling right for a while, but you know your mother, always trying to be strong, putting on a brave face." He paused, and I could hear the deep worry in his silence, almost feel it across the miles. I'm struggling, Em. Trying to keep up with everything. The business, the house, everything." I didn't hesitate for a second. "I'm coming home, Dad. Right now." When I told Jessica, her reaction surprised me. She sighed almost impatiently. "Oh, I wish I could come with you, Em," she said, though she didn't sound like she wished it at all. "But I've got some really important meetings I just can't reschedule. Here, key contacts for our new venture, you know." I was taken aback by her reluctance, the sudden shift in her focus, but my mind was already racing with thoughts of Mom. "It's okay," I said, trying to sound understanding. "I'll keep you updated." The situation at home was worse than I had imagined. Mum looked so pale, so fragile, nothing like the vibrant, strong woman I remembered. The doctor's diagnosis was devastating. A tumour. It needed immediate surgery. My world narrowed instantly. I threw myself into action, pushing aside everything else, taking over household chores, helping Dad with the business where I could, even if I didn't know all the ins and outs like Jessica did, and most importantly, just being there for Mom. I arranged to work remotely, squeezing in my design work, and company tasks late at night or in the early morning hours, fitting it all around hospital visits and helping out at home. The days just blurred together in this exhausting, worrying haze. But finally, there was good news. The surgery was successful. Mum was recovering, slowly but surely. The immediate crisis was over, and she was on the mend. Through it all, I tried to stay connected with Mark. We'd video chat every day at first, his face a comforting sight on my screen, a link back to the life I'd temporarily left behind. "How's your mum doing?" he'd ask, his brow furrowed with concern. "Better today," I'd reply, forcing a smile, trying to sound positive for both of us. "How are things there? Is Jessica behaving herself?" He'd laugh, a sound I suddenly missed, and assure me everything was fine, that Jessica was being really helpful, keeping him company while I was away. But as the days stretched into weeks, our conversations grew shorter, less frequent. The daily calls became every other day, then just a few times a week. I told myself it was just the stress of the situation, that things would go back to normal, once Mum was fully recovered and I could return home. But a month into my stay, the video calls stopped altogether. My messages went unanswered, my texts turned blue, but there were no replies. The silence from his end was deafening. The knot of worry in my gut tightened into a hard, painful ball. What was going on? After days of unanswered calls and messages, the gnawing anxiety was unbearable. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see Mark, to find out what was happening. Had something happened to him? To Jessica? Why the silence? I booked the next flight out, my mind racing with possibilities, conjuring up every scenario except the real one. Maybe Mark was sick. Maybe he'd lost his phone. Maybe, just maybe, he missed me so much. Some part of me, the hopeful, naive part, wanted to surprise him, to see his face light up when he saw me standing there. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Not my parents, not Mark, not Jessica. I just flew back, took a taxi straight to our apartment. The silence that greeted me when I opened the door felt eerie. Wrong. This wasn't the buzzing, lively apartment I'd left. It was quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard it. A muffled giggle. From the bedroom. Our bedroom. I wish I could tell you I hesitated. That I stopped, took a breath, thought things through. But I didn't. I just walked, no. I barged in like some kind of crazed person in a movie. And what I saw, God, I will never ever forget. It, Mark and Jessica, in our bed, naked, tangled together. For a split second, the world just stopped. My brain couldn't process it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. It was like time froze. Then reality, cold and brutal, came crashing down. "What the hell?" I screamed, my voice ripping out of my throat, raw and broken. They jumped apart, startled, pulling the sheets up, but neither of them looked particularly ashamed. If anything, they looked almost relieved, like the secret was out. "Emily, you're here," Jessica said, wrapping the sheet tighter around herself. Her voice was shaky, but there was no remorse in her eyes. We didn't expect you back so soon." I stared at her, my mind reeling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You didn't expect? Are you kidding me? That's all you have to say?" Mark at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, his face pale. Jessica stood up, still clutching the sheet like a shield. "Look, sis, these things happen." She said it so casually, like she was talking about spilling milk. "Mark and we fell in love. I felt like I'd just been physically punched in the gut." "In love?" "In love? You've known each other for what? A few months? While I was home taking care of our sick mother?" Sometimes you just know," Mark said, reaching a hand towards Jessica, who took it. He wouldn't look me in the eye. "We didn't mean for this to happen, Emily, but..." "But what?" I yelled, cutting him off. My voice was shaking uncontrollably. "But you just accidentally fell into bed together? Repeatedly?" Jessica gave me this sickeningly sweet smile. A smile I'd seen before, reserved for moments when she thought she'd won. "Laura, you should be happy for us," she said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "In fact, we were kind of hoping you'd understand, and maybe even let us use your wedding plans." I stared at her, completely uncomprehending. The words didn't make sense. What are you talking about?" "Well, the wedding," she explained, as if talking to a very slow child. "Everything's already paid for, all the deposits, the venue, the caterer. It seems such a shame to waste it, you know. We could just use it, celebrate our engagement instead." Don't remember much after that. I don't remember leaving the apartment. I don't remember the flight back to my parents' house. I just remember collapsing into my old childhood bed, the one I thought I'd left behind, and just sobbing. Crying until there were literally no tears left in me. My parents found me like that. They didn't push, didn't ask a million questions. They just sat with me, one on either side of the bed, holding my hands, stroking my hair, until the storm inside me had finally subsided enough for me to talk. When I finally managed to tell them everything, haltingly, through choked sobs, Dad's face turned this dangerous shade of red. He looked absolutely furious. Mum just looked devastated, heartbroken. "I'll call her," Dad said, his voice tight with controlled anger, reaching for his phone. "This ends now." The conversation was short and brutal. I could hear Jessica's voice, shrill and defensive, even through the phone speaker. "Of course you're taking her side," she screamed. "You always have. She's always been the favourite. Well, guess what? For once, I'm the one who got chosen, the one who got the man. How does it feel now, Emily?" Dad's voice, when he spoke, was icy cold. "Jessica, if you go through with this using Emily's wedding, if you do this, you are no longer part of this family. Do you understand?" There was a heavy pause on the other end, a silence that spoke volumes. Then, Jessica's voice came back, dripping with pure venom. "Fine. I don't need you anyway. I've got Mark now." And then, the line went dead. Mum pulled me into a hug, her still fragile body shaking with her own sobs. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she whispered, holding me tight. "I am so sorry." I clung to her, feeling like that little girl again, the one who just wanted her sister to be nice. But I wasn't a little girl anymore. I was a woman whose heart had just been completely shattered by the two people she thought she could trust most in the world. The days and weeks that followed the revelation of Jessica and Mark's betrayal were a blur of pain and confusion. One moment, I'd be curled up in bed, unable to face the sunlight, feeling like my world had ended. The next, I'd be filled with white-hot rage, researching lawyers, ready to sue them for every single penny I'd spent on that wedding, on everything. It was during one of these angry late-night research sessions that my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. "Hello," I said, my voice raspy. "Emily." "Oh, Emily, it's Margaret. Mark's mother. I nearly hung up." The name felt like a physical blow, but something in her voice, it stopped me. She sounded utterly devastated. "Oh, Emily," she continued, her voice trembling. We are so sorry, dear. We just heard. We can't believe it. We are so incredibly disappointed in Mark. And Jessica, how could she do that to her own sister? We always thought of you like a daughter." She poured out her heart, telling me how shocked they were, how appalled by what their son and Jessica had done. "We want to make this right, Emily," she said, her voice firming slightly. "We know money can't fix everything, can't erase the hurt, but we want to reimburse you for all the wedding expenses, every single one." True to their word, a few days later, a check arrived in the mail. It covered absolutely every last expense. The venue deposit, the caterer, the band, the dress, the invitations, everything. It was a huge amount, many thousands of dollars. It felt surreal. A weight lifted from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized was crushing me. It was validation, in a strange way. Acknowledgement from someone outside the immediate mess that what had happened was wrong. As the date that should have been my wedding day approached, I made a decision. I couldn't go back to the city. Not yet. Maybe not ever. There were too many memories there. Too much pain attached to every street corner, every restaurant, every park bench. Would it be okay if I stayed here for a while? I asked Mom and Dad one night over dinner. Maybe I could come work for the company, like you suggested before. They exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Then Dad smiled, a genuine warm smile. "We were hoping you'd say that, Em. More than hoping. We need you. We could really use your talents, especially on the design side. The offer is wide open, and just like that I had a new path, a new direction. I threw myself into working at the factory with a fervour I didn't know I possessed. It wasn't just a job, it was therapy. Every sketch, every fabric choice, every design decision felt like a defiant act. A middle finger raised to Jessica and Mark. Look, I thought, pouring my pain and anger onto the page. Look what you gave up. Look what you lost. The day of Jessica and Mark's wedding came and went. Of course, we didn't attend. I spent the day locked in my office at the factory, surrounded by fabric and sketches, working on a new line of clothing. A youth-focused line I'd been dreaming up for months, but hadn't had the time or emotional energy to pursue. Now I had both, and a powerful fuel driving me forward. Months turned into a year, then 2, then 3. My designs started gaining real traction. The youth line I launched was a massive hit, bringing in a whole new demographic of customers, significantly boosting sales. I worked tirelessly, learning every aspect of the business, not just design. I helped Dad streamline operations, improve efficiency. Within a couple of years, my contributions alone had helped increase the company's turnover by several $1 million. We weren't just a successful family business anymore. We were becoming a major player in the regional fashion industry. And I had made a name for myself, not as Sarah's sister, not as Jason's ex-fiancée, but as Emily, an innovative designer and entrepreneur. Jessica and Mark. They were gone from my life, dead to me in a way. I didn't think about them, didn't wonder if they were happy or miserable or anything in between. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. My focus was entirely on building, on creating, on proving that their betrayal hadn't broken me. It had just rerouted my energy. 3 years flew by in a blur of fabric swatches, design meetings, production schedules, and growing success. I'd poured every ounce of my pain, my passion, my determination into my work, using it to fuel the growth of our family business. Our company was thriving, and I was a respected figure in the industry. Love? Romance? It just wasn't on my radar. The wounds from Mark's betrayal had healed eventually, but the scars were there. I wasn't ready to risk my heart again. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. For now, I was content. Content to pour my energy into my designs, into the business, into building something lasting, something beautiful. One warm summer evening, I was having dinner with Mom and Dad at their place. It felt easy, comfortable. We were laughing about some silly old family memory when the doorbell rang. Dad frowned slightly. "Are we expecting anyone?" he asked. I shook my head, but this strange, cold feeling of foreboding settled in the pit of my stomach. Mum went to answer the door, and suddenly the air was filled with a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Well, well, look at this cosy little family dinner," Jessica sneered, pushing past Mom and walking right into the dining room, completely uninvited. "Glad to see you're all doing so well without me." I stood up from my chair, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. "Jessica," I said, my voice flat. "What are you doing here?" She looked different. Not like the cheerful, seemingly transformed Jessica who had visited me in the city, and not like the angry young woman I grew up with. She looked haggard, tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and a hard, desperate edge to her expression. "Oh, just thought I'd drop by," she spat, glancing around the comfortable room. "See how the other half lives, especially now that I'm newly single." Dad's eyes narrowed instantly. "What happened to Mark?" Jessica let out a bitter, humourless laugh. "Turns out your precious Mark, once a cheater, always a cheater. He left me, for his secretary. Can you believe the irony?" I felt something. Not sympathy, not really. More like a grim, cold satisfaction. Karma. A cruel, bitter kind of karma. I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and even to my own ears it didn't sound entirely truthful. "But why are you here, Jessica?" Her face hardened, the last vestiges of the fake pleasantness vanishing. "I want what's mine," she said, her eyes fixed on Dad, then sweeping towards Mom. "My share of the business, the family business. I'm family too, remember?" Dad stood up, his voice low but incredibly firm. He wasn't angry red anymore. He was just solid, unyielding. Jessica, you gave up any claim to this family and to this business the moment you betrayed your sister, the moment you sided with him. Against her, you are not getting anything. You can't do this, Jessica screamed, her composure finally shattering completely. You can't just cut me out. You owe me. Mum stepped forward then, putting a hand on Dad's arm. Her voice was soft, gentle, but it held an absolute steel I recognized. We already have, Jessica, she said. You made your choice. You are disinherited. Please, please leave. For a terrifying moment, I thought Jessica might lunge at one of them. She was trembling with rage, but instead she just glared at all of us, her eyes burning with hatred, with something wild and desperate. This isn't over, she hissed, her voice low and full of menace, before she turned and stormed out the door. A few days later, the phone calls started. Harassing calls, demanding money, threatening. Then it escalated. I was in my office at the factory one morning when I heard a huge commotion coming from the lobby. I rushed down to find Jessica standing right in the middle of our busy workspace, screaming at the top of her lungs at our bewildered employees. You're all being lied to, she was yelling. Deceived. My parents are unscrupulous. They're thieves. They've stolen what's rightfully mine. I didn't even pause to think. My mind was clear, focused. I walked calmly past security, who were trying to figure out what to do, and pulled out my phone. Keeping my voice steady, despite the chaos and fear buzzing around me, I called the police. We need officers at Fashion Forward Designs immediately, I said. We have an unstable individual on the premises causing a major disturbance. Security finally managed to escort her out, but she kept fighting, screaming threats the whole way, over. The next few days, her attacks escalated further. She tried to break into Mum and Dad's house, smashing windows. And in a final, terrifying act, she actually attempted to set fire to their front door one night. It was clear this couldn't go on. This wasn't just drama anymore. It was dangerous. With heavy hearts, feeling a deep sadness for the person Jessica had become, we took legal action. We obtained a restraining order that legally banned Jessica from coming near me, my parents, our homes, or any of our company properties. It felt final. As I sat in my office after the court hearing, looking out over the city I'd come to love, the city where my heart had been broken and then slowly, painstakingly put back together, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Sadness, deep sadness, for the sister I had lost so many years ago, even before the final betrayal. Anger at her actions, at the pain she had caused, but also a profound sense of pride. Pride in how far I had come. I was here. I was successful. I was a respected entrepreneur, a known fashion designer, building something real and lasting. Love? A romantic relationship? It could wait. The deep, cutting wounds from Mark's betrayal had healed mostly, but I wasn't ready to risk that kind of pain again. Not yet. Maybe someday, but for now, I was content. More than content, I was building, I was creating, and I was pouring all my passion, all my energy, into my designs, into the business, into building something strong and beautiful out of the ashes of what I had lost. So, what's your take on Emily's decision? Was she too harsh? Or was this the only way she could truly protect herself and find peace? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And hey, don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.